My name is Camila, and at 35 years old, I've built a successful career as a financial advisor, despite growing up in a household where support was conditional at best. For years, I've been helping my parents financially paying their $7,000 mortgage monthly, even though our relationship has always been strained. I thought money could bridge the emotional distance between us, but I was wrong. When my father casually told me, "You're not invited to Christmas," something inside me finally broke. My response was immediate and firm. "Then don't expect my $7,000. Before I tell you how this decision changed everything, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button and join me as I share how I finally stood up for myself after decades of manipulation. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood on the northwest side of Chicago, in a blue two-story house with white trim that my parents Margaret and Robert were intensely proud of. To outsiders, we were the picture-perfect American family. My father worked as a sales manager at a local car dealership, while my mother was a part-time administrative assistant at an elementary school. They hosted summer barbecues where neighbors would gather complimenting my mother's potato salad and my father's grilling skills. The adults would laugh as they sipped beers on our deck, while us kids played in the sprinkler. Everyone thought we were living the dream. Behind closed doors, though, reality was starkly different. My father ruled our home with ironclad control, dictating everything from the temperature of the house to what we watched on television. He wasn't physically abusive, but his emotional manipulation was constant. My mother, always soft-spoken and eager to keep peace, rarely contradicted him. She'd offer me sad smiles and secret hugs when he wasn't looking, but never actually stood up to him. My younger sister Amanda had a different experience. 3 years my junior, she somehow knew exactly how to win our father's favor. She'd laugh at his jokes, agree with his opinions, and mirror his interests. I watched as she received new clothes for school while I wore hand-me-downs. She got driving lessons at 16. I took the bus until I could save up for lessons myself. It wasn't that I wanted to challenge my father, I simply couldn't pretend to be someone I wasn't. From an early age, I was branded the responsible one, which in our family translated to the one who handles her own problems. When I needed money for a school trip, I babysit the neighbors' kids. When college applications came due, I researched scholarships alone at the library. My parents attended Amanda's dance recitals and soccer games, but when I won the state math competition in junior year, neither of them could find the time to drive me to the award ceremony. My math teacher, Mrs. Lawson, ended up taking me instead. Senior year of high school was when I truly understood I was on my own. While my friends' parents helped them tour colleges and fill out applications, mine showed minimal interest. "College is expensive," my father would say, "and you're smart enough to get scholarships." What he really meant was that they weren't planning to contribute. I applied to 17 schools and received acceptance letters from 14 of them. The day the financial aid package from Boston University arrived, I sat alone in my bedroom calculating costs. Even with a partial scholarship, I was looking at taking on substantial debt. I remember calling my parents into my room, showing them the numbers and asking if they could help. My father glanced at the paper for all of 10 seconds before saying, "We're saving for Amanda's education. She's not as academically gifted as you." That night changed something fundamental in me. I stopped expecting support and started planning my independence. I graduated as valedictorian, gave a speech my parents barely listened to, and spent that summer working 3 jobs, morning shifts at a bakery, afternoons as a receptionist at a hair salon, and weekends waiting tables at an upscale restaurant downtown. I arrived at Boston University with 2 suitcases and a determination to never look back. College was a blur of classes, study sessions, and work. I took extra credits each semester to graduate early, all while maintaining 3 part-time jobs. Sleep became a luxury, but freedom was worth the exhaustion. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in finance without a single family member in the audience. My first job was an entry-level position at a financial advising firm in Boston. The starting salary wasn't impressive, but it offered something priceless: distance from Chicago. I rented a tiny studio apartment, bought secondhand furniture, and lived frugally while paying off student loans. Each step up the career ladder felt like a victory from junior advisor to associate to senior consultant by the time I turned 30. Throughout these years, I maintained minimal contact with my family. Birthday calls, occasional holiday visits, and brief updates about my career. My mother would send cards with cheerful messages that never acknowledged the rift between us. My father would speak to me as if my absence was a temporary inconvenience rather than a deliberate choice. Amanda, who had dropped out of community college and married young, would sometimes reach out when she needed advice or more often money. Despite the emotional distance, I couldn't fully sever the ties. Some mixture of cultural expectation, lingering hope, and deep-rooted guilt kept me tethered to them. I told myself that maintaining a relationship, however superficial, was better than complete estrangement. Little did I know that this mindset would eventually cost me $7,000 a month and years of continued heartache. As I built my career in Boston, my expertise in financial planning and investment grew. Clients trusted me with their life savings and retirement plans. I had a knack for explaining complex financial concepts in understandable terms and for helping people secure their futures. The irony wasn't lost on me. I could solve everyone's financial problems except those in my own family. At least that's what I thought until a phone call 4 years ago changed everything. It was a Tuesday evening in March when my phone rang displaying my mother's number. Calls from her were rare enough that I immediately sensed something was wrong. "Camila," she said, her voice quavering, "we need to talk about something important." That something important turned out to be an impending foreclosure on my parents' house. Apparently, my father had made a series of poor financial decisions, including taking out a second mortgage to invest in a friend's business venture that ultimately failed. They were 3 months behind on payments, and the bank was threatening to take action. My initial reaction was disbelief, followed quickly by anger. How could they have been so irresponsible? But beneath those emotions was a familiar pull of obligation. They were still my parents regardless of our troubled history. "How much are we talking about?" I asked, already opening my laptop to check my savings account. "The monthly payment is $7,000, my mother replied softly. "But we need about $20,000 to catch up on the missed payments and late fees." The sum was substantial, even with my comfortable salary as a senior financial consultant. I had been saving for a down payment on my own home, and this would significantly delay those plans. But the alternative was my parents losing their home, and despite everything, I couldn't bear the thought of that happening. "I'll help," I said finally. "But we need to set some ground rules." Those ground rules included full transparency about their financial situation, a detailed budget that I would help create and monitor, and reasonable efforts on their part to increase income or decrease expenses. I made it clear that this was not an indefinite arrangement. I was willing to help for a year or two while they got back on their feet. My father's response when I called to discuss these terms was telling. "That sounds fair enough," he said dismissively, as if I were offering to lend him $20 rather than thousands. "I knew we could count on you. You've always been good with money." There was no acknowledgement of the sacrifice I was making, no genuine gratitude, just an expectation that of course I would help because that's what family does. I tried to ignore the sting of his attitude and focus on the practical aspects of the arrangement. I set up an automatic transfer of $7,000 each month directly to their mortgage lender. Additionally, I paid off their immediate debts and helped refinance their loans to more manageable terms. All told, my initial outlay was close to $30,000, with the ongoing monthly commitment of $7,000. For the first few months, things proceeded according to plan. My mother would send me updates on their budget, and my father made a half-hearted attempt to find better-paying work. But as time passed, the updates became less frequent, and my father's job search mysteriously stalled. When I visited that first Christmas after starting the payments, I noticed new furniture in their living room and a large-screen television that hadn't been there before. When I inquired about these purchases, my father waved off my concerns. "We got great deals," he said. "Besides, we've been living like paupers for months. We deserved something nice." I bit my tongue, reminding myself that I couldn't control how they spent every dollar of their own income as long as the mortgage was being paid. Still, it was clear they weren't taking our agreement as seriously as I was. That visit also revealed how they viewed our arrangement. My father referred to my contributions as Camila's payments, as if they were some sort of filial duty rather than an extraordinary act of generosity. When family friends came over, he bragged about my success in Boston, but framed it as if my financial assistance was simply what any daughter would do. "She's doing very well for herself," he'd say with a smile that never quite reached his eyes, "making us proud and taking care of her old parents." My mother, though slightly more appreciative in private, never contradicted him or acknowledged the sacrifices I was making. She seemed to accept his framing of the situation, perhaps out of habit, or perhaps to keep the peace. Amanda's attitude was similarly frustrating. During a rare dinner together, she commented, "It must be nice to have so much money you can just give it away," as if my assistance to our parents was a luxury rather than a burden. Her husband Jeff nodded in agreement, adding, "Some of us have to budget every penny." The irony that I was the one who had worked 3 jobs to put myself through college while Amanda had dropped out after a year wasn't lost on me, but I swallowed the retort. Fighting wouldn't change anything, and I was determined to maintain whatever fragile peace we had established. As the arrangement continued beyond the initial year, I began to feel increasingly resentful. Not only was I financing my parents' mortgage, but I was being treated as nothing more than a convenient money tree. Phone calls from them inevitably included updates on household expenses or hints about unexpected costs. My birthday card from them that year included a note about property taxes being higher than expected. I tried multiple times to encourage them toward financial independence. I offered to help my father update his resume and practice for interviews. I suggested my mother look into full-time positions with benefits rather than her part-time role. I even researched downsizing options for them, finding several nice condominiums that would significantly reduce their housing costs. All these suggestions were met with resistance or outright rejection. "We're too old to start over," my father would say, though he was only in his early 60s. "This is our home. We've built our life here." The unspoken message was clear. Why should they make difficult changes when I was willing to foot the bill? My financial success had become a trap of my own making, binding me to their poor choices and entitlement. By the time our arrangement entered its 4th year, the $7,000 monthly transfer had become a constant source of stress. Each payment represented another month of enabling behavior I wouldn't tolerate in my professional life. If a client had shown such disregard for financial planning, I would have firmly directed them toward more sustainable choices. But with family, the emotional entanglements made such directness nearly impossible. What I didn't realize then was that my parents weren't just taking advantage of my financial support, they were taking advantage of my desire for connection and acceptance. Every time I checked my bank statement and saw that automatic transfer, I wasn't just paying their mortgage. I was buying the hope that someday they might value me for who I was, rather than what I could provide. It would take a casual dismissal during a routine November phone call to finally shatter that illusion. It was early November, and I was calling to discuss my plans to visit for Christmas. The past few years, I'd flown in for a brief 2-day visit, long enough to exchange gifts and share a meal, short enough to avoid too much tension. These visits were never particularly warm or fulfilling, but they maintained the facade of family connection that I still clung to. I had just finished telling my father about my flight options when he cleared his throat uncomfortably. "About Christmas," he began, his tone oddly casual. "We're doing things differently this year." "Oh," I replied, assuming they perhaps wanted to go to a restaurant instead of cooking, or maybe exchange gifts on Christmas Eve rather than Christmas Day. "Yeah," he continued, "Amanda's in-laws are coming to stay with us for the week. Jeff's parents, his sister, and her husband, their 2 kids. It's going to be pretty full." I waited for him to continue to explain how this affected the timing of my visit or sleeping arrangements. but the silence stretched on until I finally prompted him. So should I book a hotel instead of staying at the house? He sighed as if I was being deliberately obtuse. What I'm saying is you're not invited to Christmas this year. There's just no room with Amanda's in-laws all coming. The words hit me like a physical blow. Not invited. To Christmas with my own family, while they welcomed Jeff's family people I had met maybe twice at Amanda's wedding and a baby shower. I see, I managed to say, my voice suddenly distant to my own ears. It's just logistically complicated, he added, not sounding particularly apologetic. You understand how these things are. In that moment, 4 years of resentment, decades of emotional neglect, and the absurdity of my current financial arrangement came crashing down on me. Here I was sending them $7,000 every single month, and I wasn't even welcome at their Christmas table. Actually, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice remained, I don't understand. I've been paying your mortgage for 4 years, and you're telling me I can't join my own family for Christmas because there's no room. There was a pause, and I could almost hear him recalibrating. He hadn't expected pushback. Now, Camila, he said, his tone shifting to the patronizing one he'd used throughout my childhood. Those are two completely separate things. The financial arrangement we have is one thing, and holiday planning is another. Are they? I asked. Because it seems like I'm family enough to support financially, but not family enough to celebrate holidays with. You're being dramatic, he said dismissively. It's just one Christmas. You can come next year. Something inside me, something that had been bending and accommodating for 35 years, finally snapped. Then don't expect my $7,000, I replied, my voice calm despite the storm raging inside me. There was a beat of stunned silence. What did you say? He asked, his tone dangerous now. I said if I'm not welcome at Christmas, then don't expect my money anymore. It's pretty simple. You can't just, he spluttered. We have an arrangement. Your mother and I will lose the house. That arrangement, I said carefully, was based on the understanding that we were family helping family. If I'm not family enough to be included in Christmas, then I'm not family enough to keep paying your mortgage. This is blackmail, he said, his voice rising. You're threatening us. No, I corrected him. I'm establishing boundaries. For the first time in my life, actually. In the background, I could hear my mother's anxious voice asking what was wrong. My father covered the phone partially, but I could still make out his words. Camila's throwing a tantrum about Christmas and threatening to cut us off. When he returned to the call, his approach had changed. Look, maybe we can work something out. Perhaps you could come for Christmas Eve instead, or stop by for breakfast on Christmas morning before everyone else wakes up. The suggestions were so insulting, being offered scraps of time while Amanda's in-laws got the full family Christmas experience, that I almost laughed. No, I said simply. I won't be coming at all. And effective immediately, I'm stopping the automatic transfers to your mortgage lender. You have until the end of the month to make other arrangements. You can't do this, he said, panic now evident in his voice. We're your parents. Yes, I agreed. And parents are supposed to love their children unconditionally, not just when it's convenient or financially beneficial. Goodbye, Dad. I hung up before he could respond, my hand shaking but my resolve firm. For the first time in 4 years, perhaps the first time in my life, I had stood up to my father. The sensation was terrifying and liberating all at once. Within minutes, my phone began buzzing with texts and calls. I silenced it and opened my banking app instead. With a few taps, I canceled the automatic transfer scheduled for December 1st. $7,000 that would remain in my account, no longer funding my own exclusion. As I sat in my quiet apartment staring at the confirmation screen, I felt a complex mix of emotions wash over me. Guilt, certainly. I had been raised to believe that caring for parents was an absolute obligation regardless of how they treated you. Relief that I had finally stood up for myself. Fear about what would happen next. But beneath all of that was something unexpected, a quiet sense of pride. I had finally said no to being used. Whatever came next, that victory couldn't be taken away from me. The aftermath of my decision was immediate and chaotic. Within an hour of hanging up my phone had accumulated 27 text messages and 11 missed calls. I forced myself to read through them all, steeling myself against the emotional manipulation I knew would be coming. From my father, "Call me back immediately. We need to discuss this like adults. You're making a terrible mistake. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us." From my mother, "Please call us sweetheart. Your father is very upset. We didn't mean to hurt your feelings. We can work this out." From Amanda, "What is wrong with you? Mom is crying because of you. They're going to lose their house because you're upset about a stupid holiday. You've always been so selfish. Some things never change." Each message attempted to frame me as the villain, unreasonable, selfish, overreacting. Not one acknowledged that excluding me from a family Christmas while continuing to accept my financial support might be problematic. The narrative was already being constructed. Camila, the successful daughter, was abandoning her family in their time of need over a petty disagreement. When I didn't respond to the messages, the approach changed. My mother called and left a tearful voicemail about how they were too old to start over, how they would have nowhere to go, how this would destroy what remained of our family. She didn't once mention that they had excluded me from Christmas or acknowledge how that might have felt. The next day, Amanda called my office. When I didn't pick up, she left a scathing message with my assistant saying it was a family emergency. When I finally called her back, her focus was entirely on the financial implications. "Do you have any idea what you're doing to them?" she demanded without preamble. "They can't qualify for a new mortgage at their age. They'll lose everything." "They've had 4 years to prepare for this possibility," I pointed out. "The arrangement was never meant to be permanent." "So you're punishing them because you're not invited to one Christmas. Do you know how childish that sounds?" "Is that how Dad framed it?" I asked. "Because that's not what happened. I was told I'm not welcome for Christmas, but my money still is. That's not acceptable to me anymore." "It's just a crowded house situation," Amanda insisted. "Jeff's family has been planning this for months. It's not personal. Making space for extended in-laws but not your own daughter is very personal," I replied. "And it's just the latest example of where I stand in this family's priorities." "Well, congratulations," she said bitterly. "You've made your point. Now Mom is having anxiety attacks. Dad is talking about having to declare bankruptcy, and instead of one person being uncomfortable at Christmas, our entire family is in crisis. I hope you're satisfied." After hanging up with Amanda, I received an unexpected message from Jeff's sister Tara, whom I barely knew. She had somehow gotten my number from Amanda and texted, "Just so you know, we were never told you weren't invited for Christmas. We assumed you'd be there and were looking forward to meeting you properly. Not sure what's going on, but wanted you to know that." That message was illuminating. It suggested that the no-room excuse was exactly that, an excuse. My parents had made a choice to exclude me and then blamed it on logistics. The situation escalated further when relatives began taking sides. My father's brother called to tell me I was breaking my parents' hearts. My mother's sister reached out more gently, asking if there was anything she could do to help mediate the situation. 2 of my cousins sent supportive messages saying they had always noticed how differently I was treated from Amanda. Most disturbing was discovering that my parents had taken the conflict to social media. My mother had posted a vague but pointed message about children who abandon their elderly parents that received dozens of sympathetic comments. My father had apparently been telling their friends that I had cut them off without warning because of selfish reasons, conveniently omitting the years of financial support I had provided. The pressure was immense and coming from all directions. Old family friends I hadn't spoken to in years messaged me asking why I was being so cruel. My childhood piano teacher, now in her 70s, called to express her disappointment in my behavior, saying my parents had told her I refused to help them with just a small loan, despite my wealth. It was during this barrage that I received my credit card statement and noticed something unusual, a charge for $4,000 at a travel agency dated 2 weeks before the "you're not invited to Christmas" conversation. The card was one I had given my parents for emergency use only with the understanding they would ask before using it for any significant expense. Curious, I called the travel agency and, presenting myself as Margaret Adams, asked about the booking. The cheerful agent informed me that my Caribbean cruise package was all confirmed for January, a 10-day luxury sailing for 4 people. I sat in stunned silence as the pieces fell into place. Not only had my parents excluded me from Christmas, but they had also used my emergency credit card to book a luxury cruise for themselves and presumably Amanda and Jeff, all while continuing to accept my mortgage payments and pleading financial hardship. That evening, I pulled up my bank statements from the past 4 years. In addition to the $7,000 monthly transfers, there were dozens of smaller transactions: emergency dental work for my mother, car repairs; for my father, graduation gifts for Amanda's stepchildren; contributions to family vacations I hadn't been invited to join. All told, I had given them over $350,000 in 4 years. Money that could have purchased my own home, funded an early retirement, or simply provided me with greater security and peace of mind. As I stared at those numbers, my resolve strengthened. This wasn't just about Christmas. It was about years of being used and taken for granted. It was about a fundamental lack of respect that money could never fix. And it was time to address it face to face. I decided that a confrontation of this magnitude couldn't happen over the phone. After arranging for a week off work, I booked a flight to Chicago without informing my family of my plans. The 3-hour journey gave me time to prepare mentally to rehearse what I wanted to say, and to strengthen my resolve against the emotional manipulation I knew would come. I rented a car at O'Hare and drove slowly through my old neighborhood, noting how little had changed since I'd left for college. The familiar streets both comforted and unsettled me. This place had shaped me for better and worse. When I finally pulled up in front of my parents' house, I sat in the car for several minutes gathering my courage. The doorbell chimed the same melody it had throughout my childhood. My mother answered, her expression shifting rapidly from neutral to shocked to anxious. "Camila," she gasped. "What are you doing here?" "We need to talk," I said simply. "All of us." She stepped back wordlessly to let me in, calling for my father in a strained voice. As I entered the living room, I noticed something immediately: shopping bags. Lots of them. Nordstrom, Macy's, Best Buy, high-end retailers with expensive merchandise. Christmas shopping apparently was well underway despite their financial crisis. My father emerged from his study, his face darkening when he saw me. "You could have called first," he said by way of greeting. "Would you have answered?" I asked. Before he could respond, the front door opened again and Amanda walked in with Jeff. Apparently they'd been summoned via text. Amanda's expression was hostile, Jeff's uncomfortable. The gang was all here. "Let's sit down," I suggested, maintaining a calm I didn't entirely feel. We gathered awkwardly in the living room, my parents on the sofa, Amanda and Jeff on the love seat, me alone in an armchair. The physical arrangement felt symbolic of our family dynamics. "I've come to discuss our situation in person," I began, "because I think there have been some misunderstandings." "The only misunderstanding," my father interrupted, "is you thinking you can just cut us off without warning after we've relied on your help for years." 4 years, I corrected. 4 years during which I've sent $7,000 every month. That's $336,000, not counting extra expenses and emergencies. I removed a folder from my bag and placed it on the coffee table. "I've printed statements showing all the transfers and additional expenditures. The total is actually closer to $350,000. Money that was meant to help you get back on your feet, not fund a lifestyle you can't afford." My mother looked away, unable to meet my eyes. My father's face flushed red. "We never asked for an accounting," he said defensively. "That's what family does. They help each other without keeping score." "Except our family has always kept score," I replied. "How many times growing up did I hear about every dollar spent on my education? How many times was I told I should be grateful for the roof over my head and the food on my plate, Basic parental obligations presented as extraordinary generosity. Amanda shifted uncomfortably. This isn't about childhood grievances, Camila. It's about mom and dad needing help now. It's about more than that, I insisted. It's about a pattern of behavior where I'm expected to give endlessly while receiving nothing in return, not even basic inclusion in family gatherings. I turned to face Amanda directly. I spoke with Tara, by the way, Jeff's sister. She said they were never told I wasn't invited for Christmas. In fact, they were expecting to meet me. Jeff's eyebrows shot up in surprise, and he turned to look at Amanda, who suddenly became very interested in her fingernails. So the no-room excuse was a lie, I continued. There was room. I just wasn't wanted. That's not true, my mother interjected weakly. Then what is the truth? I challenged. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I'm only valued in this family for my financial contributions. My father stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. We don't have to justify our holiday plans to you. The fact that you would use money to try to control us is despicable. Control you? I repeated incredulously. I've never tried to control anything. I've given and given without conditions until now. The one time I set a boundary saying I won't fund a family that excludes me, suddenly I'm the villain. I pulled out a second set of documents from my folder. And what about this a $4,000 charge on my emergency credit card for a Caribbean cruise in January? A cruise for 4 people that I wasn't told about, much less invited on. The room fell silent. My mother's face crumpled. My father's expression hardened into a defensive mask. We deserve nice things too, he said finally. We've worked hard all our lives. So have I replied. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college. I built my career from nothing with no help from anyone. And for the past 4 years, I've worked to support not just myself, but this entire household. I turned to my sister. Amanda, did you know about the cruise? She had the grace to look embarrassed. Dad said it was a surprise, she mumbled. A thank you for everything Jeff and I do to help them. And what exactly do you do to help them? I asked, genuinely curious. Because from what I can tell, I'm the one paying the mortgage, the property taxes, the insurance. We're here, she shot back. We visit. We help around the house. We're present in their lives, not just sending money from hundreds of miles away. You're right, I acknowledged. You are present. And when limited Christmas space had to be allocated, you and your in-laws were chosen. I understand that now. I returned my attention to my parents. What I don't understand is why you thought I would continue financing a life that I'm not welcome to be part of, even occasionally. You're twisting things, my father insisted. It was just one holiday. Was it? I asked. What about the cruise you booked without telling me? What about the family vacation to Wisconsin last summer that I only learned about through Facebook photos? What about Thanksgiving 2 years ago when you went to Amanda's instead, saying it was easier for everyone? The pattern laid bare was undeniable. The silence that followed confirmed what I had long suspected, but never wanted to face. I had never been a priority in my own family. I didn't come here to argue, I said finally. I came to inform you that I've officially removed myself from your accounts. The credit card has been canceled. The automatic transfers have stopped. You have 30 days before the next mortgage payment is due. You can't just abandon us, my mother said, tears streaming down her face now. We're family. Family goes both ways, I replied gently. It's not just financial support. It's emotional support, respect, inclusion. It's making space at the Christmas table for your daughter even when it's inconvenient. My father, seeing that his anger wasn't working, switched tactics. What about family loyalty? What about honoring your parents? These are values you were raised with. Loyalty and honor require reciprocity, I said. They require that all parties act with integrity. For years, I've been loyal to a family that hasn't returned that loyalty. I've honored parents who have treated me as an afterthought unless they needed money. I stood up, gathering my documents. I'm not cutting you out of my life. I'm resetting our relationship to something sustainable and mutual. If you want me in your lives as a daughter, I'm here, but not as a bank. Amanda stood too, her expression softening slightly. You know I've always been jealous of you, she admitted unexpectedly. You escaped. You built this amazing life. You didn't need anyone's approval or help. Do you know how intimidating that is? I didn't escape, I corrected her. I was pushed out, and I would have given anything for the approval and support you received so freely. She looked away, absorbing this perspective that clearly had never occurred to her. As for the house, I added, looking back at my parents, I suggest you contact a financial advisor, not me, about your options. Downsizing might be necessary. Retirement may need to be reconsidered. These are realities many people your age face. We're too old to start over, my father protested, but the argument sounded hollow even to him now. You're in your early 60s, I pointed out. You potentially have decades ahead of you. Better to make changes now than to continue depending on someone else's financial support that could end at any time. I walked to the door feeling both heavier and lighter than when I had arrived. I'll be at the Holiday Inn through Friday if you want to talk further. After that, I'm going back to Boston. As I stepped onto the porch, my mother called after me, "What about Christmas?" I turned back one last time. I think I'll spend it with people who actually want me around. Merry Christmas to all of you. Walking to my rental car, I felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time in my adult life, I had spoken my truth without apology or compromise. Whatever happened next, I knew I had finally broken free from a cycle that had been slowly draining my financial and emotional resources for years. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to navigate on my own terms. The days and weeks that followed my confrontation were some of the most difficult I had experienced since leaving for college. I returned to Boston carrying a complex burden of emotions, relief at having finally stood my ground, guilt over potentially causing my parents' financial hardship, anger at the years of manipulation, and grief for the loving family relationship I had never truly had. My first instinct was to throw myself into work to avoid processing these feelings by staying busy. But after a particularly long day at the office, I found myself sitting in my car in the parking garage, unable to remember the drive there. The emotional numbness was a warning sign I couldn't ignore. That evening, I searched online for therapists specializing in family dynamics and found Dr. Andrea Mercer, whose profile mentioned experience with adult children of emotionally unavailable parents. Our first session was uncomfortable. Laying bare decades of family dysfunction to a stranger wasn't easy. But her validation of my experiences and feelings was like a balm to wounds I hadn't fully acknowledged. What you're describing is a pattern of conditional love and financial exploitation, she said during our third session. Your decision to stop enabling this dynamic isn't selfish, it's healthy. December arrived, and with it the first mortgage payment my parents would face without my assistance. I received no calls or texts about it, though Amanda sent a terse message saying they had figured something out for now. The relief I felt was tempered by a nagging worry about their welfare, proving how deeply ingrained my sense of responsibility remained. As Christmas approached, I faced the prospect of spending the holiday alone for the first time. The thought was both liberating and terrifying. No more tense family dinners or performative gift exchanges, but also no connection to my past or traditions. A colleague, Sophia, noticed my subdued mood during our department's holiday lunch and invited me to volunteer with her at a local shelter on Christmas Day. I've been doing it for years, she explained. It puts everything in perspective, and the community there is amazing. Christmas morning found me serving pancakes and bacon to families experiencing homelessness. The gratitude in their eyes was genuine, their holiday wishes sincere despite their circumstances. I spent hours talking with a woman named Diane, who had lost her home after a medical emergency bankrupted her family. Family isn't always blood, she told me as we cleared plates together. Family is who shows up when you need them, who sees you for who you are. Her words resonated deeply. That evening, instead of returning to my empty apartment, I joined Sophia and several other volunteers for dinner at her home. We laughed, shared stories, and formed connections that felt more authentic than any holiday I had experienced with my biological family in years. January brought silence from Chicago. I learned through social media that my parents had indeed taken their cruise, posted photos, showed them smiling on a beach with Amanda and Jeff. I felt a momentary sting before reminding myself that I had chosen this separation for valid reasons. I channeled my energy into rebuilding my life without the financial burden I had carried for so long. The $7,000 that now remained in my account each month went toward my own future or a down payment fund for a home, retirement investments, and experiences I had long denied myself. I also began using my financial expertise to help others in more meaningful ways. I volunteered with a nonprofit offering financial literacy workshops to low-income communities. Teaching people to budget, save, and plan for their futures was deeply satisfying, particularly when I saw the confidence it gave them. February brought an unexpected email from my mother, the first direct contact since our confrontation. It was brief and tentative. "I hope you're well. The house is on the market. Your father won't admit it, but this change has been necessary for a long time. Take care." No apology, no acknowledgement of past wrongs, but a small step toward reality. I responded with equal brevity, wishing them luck with the sale and asking to be updated on their plans. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was communication without manipulation, progress of a sort. Spring arrived, bringing with it new growth, both literal and metaphorical. I had started dating again after years of focusing solely on work and family obligations. I joined a hiking club and rediscovered my childhood love of painting. My therapist noted the change in my demeanor, the straightening of my posture, the increased frequency of my smile. "You're reclaiming yourself," she observed, "building a life based on your values rather than others' expectations." It was in June, 6 months after our confrontation, that my mother called unexpectedly one Sunday afternoon. I answered with trepidation, unsure what fresh crisis or guilt trip awaited. "Camila," she said, her voice different somehow, less strained, more present. "Do you have a few minutes to talk?" "I do," I replied cautiously. "We sold the house," she began. "We've moved into a 2-bedroom condo closer to downtown. It's actually quite nice, much less to maintain." "That sounds sensible," I said, surprised by the decision. "How are you adjusting?" There was a pause before she continued. "It's been hard for your father. His identity was so wrapped up in that house and the image of success it projected. But it's been freeing for me." Something in her tone made me sit up straighter. "Freeing how?" "I've spent my whole life trying to keep everyone happy, especially your father, making myself smaller to avoid conflicts. I think I did the same to you. I expected you to accommodate, to understand, to give without complaint, just like I did." The admission was so unexpected that I found myself momentarily speechless. "I'm sorry, Camila," she continued into the silence. "I didn't protect you the way a mother should. I didn't see how unfair we were being asking you to support us financially while treating you as an afterthought. Or maybe I did see it but was too afraid to speak up." "Mom," I managed finally. "Are you okay? This doesn't sound like you." She gave a small laugh. "I've been seeing someone, a counselor. After you left in November, after everything fell apart, I needed to understand what had happened to our family. She's been helping me see patterns I've been blind to for decades." We talked for nearly 2 hours that afternoon, the longest, most honest conversation we'd ever had. She spoke about her own upbringing, about meeting my father when she was just 19 and being swept away by his confidence. She acknowledged the differential treatment between Amanda and me, not justifying it, but at least recognizing it. "Your father and I are trying to work things out," she said near the end of our call. "He's resistant to therapy, but he's agreed to come to a session with me next week. I don't know if he'll ever be able to see things differently or apologize the way he should. But I wanted you to know that I'm trying to understand, and I'm truly sorry." That call marked the beginning of a slow, cautious rebuilding, not of the previous unhealthy dynamic, but of something new and tentative. My mother and I began speaking weekly. She sent birthday cards with heartfelt messages rather than hints about financial needs. She asked about my life in Boston with genuine interest. My father remained more distant, though he occasionally joined their end of the phone calls with awkward greetings. The cruise photos disappeared from social media, replaced by more modest images of their new condo and local activities. Amanda and I reached a fragile truce. A coffee meeting during my brief visit to Chicago in August revealed that her perfect life had its own struggles. Jeff's business was failing, their marriage was strained, and she envied the independence I had fought so hard to achieve. "I never learned to stand on my own," she admitted. "I went from Dad taking care of everything to Jeff taking over. I don't know who I am outside of being someone's daughter or wife." As for me, the financial freedom of no longer supporting my parents allowed me to finally purchase a small but charming condo in a neighborhood I loved. I expanded my volunteer work and even began mentoring young women entering the finance industry. I started dating a kind, thoughtful architect named Daniel, who listened when I spoke and valued my boundaries. The greatest gift of that difficult year, however, was my own transformation. I learned that true giving comes from love, not obligation or guilt. I discovered that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential for healthy relationships. And I realized that sometimes walking away from toxic patterns is the bravest, most loving thing you can do, not just for yourself, but for everyone involved. This Christmas, I've decided to host a small gathering in my new home. I've invited friends who have become chosen family colleagues, who have supported me, and yes, my parents if they choose to come. The invitation is given freely without expectation or conditions. Whatever their decision, I'll celebrate, surrounded by genuine connection and mutual respect. The journey hasn't been easy, and it isn't over. Healing family wounds takes time, and some scars may never fully fade. But standing in my truth has given me something money could never buy: the freedom to build relationships based on authentic caring rather than obligation or fear. If you're facing a similar situation, supporting family members who don't value you beyond what you can provide, know that you deserve better. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for your well-being and for creating relationships built on mutual respect. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable harmful patterns. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family? What helped you find the strength to stand your ground? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, true family sees you, values you, and makes space for you, not just when it's convenient, but always.